Nothing is easy in game development. The average person looks at the screen, sees things that look like real-life things, and assumes that it's kind of a simple process to transpose real life to not real life. That is, of course, not the case. In video games, you want things to look like real-life things, but as far as the computer is concerned, they aren't things at all. It's just a whole bunch of numbers. But people smarter than you or me have figured out a long time ago how to make those numbers look like physical shapes. However, just the shape of an object being correct does not mean that it'll necessarily look like that object. You'll be able to figure out, of course, what it is. If I show you a untextured 3D model of a hand grenade, it'll look like a hand grenade. But you'd never know, without textures, that the model I was showing you was a glass hand grenade salsa jar. The issue with that is that glass hand grenade salsa jars aren't actually the best example. But real-world things have details that really seal the deal. And details are expensive. The world is, unfortunately, not a simulation. Computer video games are. And when those video games need to be simulated at like 60 or 120 frames per second because the clientele base that consumes video games really can't stand anything below a smooth 60, sometimes you can get away with like 30 frame rate. That's not an accusation or anything, by the way. I'm the exact same way. But to do that, on the computer side, we're going to need to take some shortcuts. One of these most common shortcuts are textures. You're all familiar with color textures. That name varies a little bit based on what software you're using, but basically, it's what makes the color. If my shirt were to be a 3D model, the texture would be pretty much all pink with some white for the logo and whatnot. If my watch here was a 3D object, the texture would be black for the band and the face, and then kind of like a bronzy gold for the rim and the handles and... what are they called? Arms? What are the things on watches called? Anyway, hands. They're called hands. If this were a 3D model, and all you gave it was a texture, it would not shine in the light like it is, I'm hoping you can see on camera. It would look the exact same as my shirt, or my pants, or my skin, or anything else you see before you, and that's because all it is color. It doesn't know what lights are, it's a picture, it's a PNG. So to take care of that, we do a whole bunch of other things, which are basically the same as the color textures, they just use different colors, and they tell the computer what to do when it's drawing the specific pixels that make up your shirt or your face or your watch or whatever. And unfortunately, for people trying to create it, that's not really art so much as it is math. More importantly, it's a complicated visual representation of math, which pretty much guarantees that it's going to be real hard to make one by hand. The game industry realizes this, of course, which is why there's entire professions to making textures for their games. Unfortunately, for indie game developers, most of us don't know how to make really complicated textures, and even if we did, the software to make it is expensive, it's incredibly time-consuming, and a whole host of other things that I don't really know because that's just terrifying. So, what's the alternative? Well, really, it's only down to one option if you aren't making them by hand. The only other option is to just steal someone else's off online, which, while technically legal, doesn't sit right with me because it's not mine. I'm not making it. It's not original to me, and I'm hoping that I'm not the only one that feels that way, because otherwise this tool I just made isn't going to be useful. This tool I've just made is incredibly useful, and this is normally the part where I sit here and yammer at you about how it works, and I am going to do that, but I'm also going to do that while showing you how to use it. I'm going to now move us to my computer, which I can do seamlessly through movie magic and real magic. I'm a magician as much as I am a game developer, so not a great one, but bear with me here. I can't actually snap, but I think the hand gesture should do what I need it to do. Anyway, here we are, on a desktop. You may have seen one before. Let's show you Southpaw Development's Texture Builder. Icon looks like this. You can go and pick it up from itch. If you go to itch.io and you search for Texture Builder, it'll be the first project that pops up, or at least it should be. It might be a little biased because I am the owner of this, and sometimes it likes to put things you own first. But if you click on it and take it, you'll see a page like this. I will also have a link to this page down in the description to make things a touch easier. But you simply press download here. It might prompt you with a screen asking if you want to donate. You of course can, but that is by no means necessary. The point of this tool is that it is free. But you download it, unpack it, and run the executable as it says here. So here we are inside of the texture builder. As you can see right now, there don't seem to be a whole lot of controls, but that's just because it's waiting for you to click New Object. This is how you get a scene started, and as a matter of fact, if you click and hold here to start a new scene, it'll take you to this exact same page. Nothing happens because we're already at a new scene. Before I jump into this and overwhelm you with all of the controls, I just want to show you we've also got a little ad for my game, which, seems fair considering this is a free tool, so click it. But a button that'll take you to my devlogs, and as well as a Google form where you can leave your feedback, have any bug reports, stuff like that, because this is still very much so a in-progress type deal. Anyway, what do we want to make? Well, over here in Unity, I've got a little sample scene set up with what you can hopefully tell is supposed to be a backyard pool. But it only kind of looks like a pool right now, or more accurately, looks like a hole in the ground with a couple of ridges around it. But I think we can change that. I've gone ahead and placed some generic colors that you can make inside of the Unity engine on top of the pool here to kind of help explain what I want to go for. I want to go for a fancy but not necessarily uber rich kind of aesthetic here. So I'm thinking some tan checkered tiles running along the edge of the pool here, kind of for an elevated patio space up here. This brown thing leading in, I'd like to be a dirt path that walks inside. This could be a backyard or community pool or whatever. For the pool itself, a simple white block stone ridge for it. For the walls, I'm thinking something with depth. But past that, I think we'll figure it out at the time of making it. And for the floor, I'd like a nice shiny gold pattern. And for the fence around it, we can go simple, like wood. So let's get into the texture builder and actually make these. Alright, first things first, I think we should make the tiles for the patio. So I'm going to click New Object. You can see here we have all kinds of basic geometry that really is the most creative part of it. You can use it to make whatever you like. It's all kind of piecemeal. But I'm actually going to go over into masonry here, where at the moment all we have is a smooth rectangle tile and a smooth square tile. I'm going to grab the smooth square tile. I click on it, and you can see I have a new object created, as well as a whole bunch of controls over here that are frankly a little overwhelming and potentially an eyesore, but that's the aesthetic we've got. I will get to all of these in due time, but let's start simple up here with the manipulation controls. These go into 3 columns of movement, scaling, and rotation, which seem pretty self-explanatory. These move it around the plane. This, of course, moves it closer and further away from the camera, although that's a little hard to tell when you don't have multiple objects overlapping one another. Scale scales the object along the X, Y, and Z axes respectively, as well as one where you can scale it all uniformly. Rotation rotates along the object's X, Y, and Z axes, although you can turn on global rotation, which will let you do that along the camera's X, Y, and Z axes. One thing I forgot to mention is that snapping over here lets you move the object in uniform increments. As you can see, I'm clicking quickly, and it's moving in little jumps. Nice for precision patterns. But I'm going to go ahead and turn that back off, and you can see we have buttons down here that let you reset the position, the scale, and the rotation of the object to get yourself back to where you want to be. Now, like I said, I'd like this to be a checkered tile pattern. So I think if we had 4 tiles as well as something tying it together here in the middle, that would look pretty good, with these being the same color and these 2 being the same color. So I'm going to turn snapping on. I'm going to hold down Shift so I can move it quicker, and I'm going to move it over here. That's just a rough place we'll leave it for the time being, as well as moving it down so it's roughly in the bottom left corner. I'm going to scale it up. Again, with any operation in here, if you hold down Shift, it'll make the operation go faster, and if you hold down Alt, it'll make the operation go slower. As you can see here, I've scaled this tile beyond the bounds down here, but since we have tiling turned on for this object, it's overflowing here, here, and here, so that if this texture were to repeat, or tile, it would combine seamlessly together. I can, of course, turn tiling off or back on, and I can actually control the individual objects that are tiling for this. But this is a touch too big and we don't want it overflowing, so I'm going to shrink it back down and adjust its position until it's covering about a quarter of the screen. As a matter of fact, I think that's a bit too big, so I'm going to scale this down till it's 5 units big, and I'm going to tuck it into this corner. All right. I'm going to now duplicate this object. I could select a new object, give it the same modifiers, and move it to a new spot, but I can also duplicate it and move it over to where I want it to be. This saves you a hassle of assigning all of the same scale and other values that you've given it previously, and you can just duplicate it if you want multiple ones. So I'm going to get this into this spot until they look about equidistant from their sides, this one from the right and this one from the left. Now, since I want it to be checkered, these two tiles I'm going to duplicate up here, I want the top right to have the bottom left's color and the top left to have the bottom right's color. So it's time to actually set these colors, assuming that we don't want them to be this boring gray. I'm going to go over here and click on Color Lab, and you can see we can control the red, green, and blue sliders. To get a tan, we're going to need a good amount of red, some green, and less blue to give us kind of a sunset orange there. And for this one, I think I'd like it to be a little more washed out, so I'll give it a good amount of red, but I'll give it more green and more blue to make it a lighter color. Now that we have that settled, I'll go back into Manipulate, I'll duplicate this object, and I'll move it up to its corresponding top right corner. You can see I'm holding down Alt now to make some fine adjustments, and then holding down Shift to move it quickly. I, of course, have snapping turned on for all of these movements. I overshot a little bit, so we'll hold Alt and shift it back, and you can see that's about lined up with this right tile. If you wanted to move this tile straight up to make sure they were aligned and changed its color values to be like this, that of course would work as well. I'm going to take my darker tile here, duplicate it, and do pretty much the same process. You can see as I'm shifting it up, it's merging into that tile above it, giving us some clipping issues, but as I move it over, that resolves itself. Now, as you may have seen just there as I was shifting these around, these tiles have some depth that make them different from normal squares. As a matter of fact, if I go over here and click Change Mesh, as you can see right now, we have a smooth square tile. If I click Change Mesh, navigate over to Basic Geometry and select a cube, you can sort of see what we're working with here. But this does more than just color it on the texture. If we move over to the Normal Lab, you can see we are now displaying the normals of these objects. The normals of an object mimic how light would interact with these objects if they were actually physically in 3D space. This texture will be applied to a flat object, so it of course will not have any actual geometric depth, so the illusion will fall apart somewhat if you stick your eye right up next to it, but for a purpose of an in-game texture, this will serve our purpose quite nicely. You can see these tiles have substantially more depth than this square, so I'm going to go ahead and change this back to a smooth square tile. Now you've probably noticed these options over here: roughness, grain size, dither, and cutout. Dither and cutout give something of an explanation here, but roughness sets a pattern into these to make them diffuse light slightly differently, as well as grain size controlling how big or how small that grain is. But I'm going to leave grain size at 0, and I'm going to put roughness around 0.8. I'll do the same for these other objects to make them uniform. Of course, I could have done this before I duplicated them, and they would have all had this good to go. But it's not much of a hassle to do it after the fact when you have only 4 objects. Now, dithering. This helps make spheres seem substantially smoother, and has a much smoother, thinner grain. Cutout is slightly more self-explanatory. If you select it, it will inverse the normals so that the light will appear as though this is a cavity instead of something convex. But we'll touch on that a bit more later when we're doing the pool walls texture. I'm going to turn off cutout, go back to manipulate, and I think we need one more object here in the center as sort of a centerpiece. So I'm going to click New Object. I think we'll go ahead and make this one a trapezoid. We'll scale it up slightly, and I think I'll give it a nice 90-degree rotation. I'm now realizing that 90 degrees didn't do anything. What I actually want is 45. There we go. I'm going to bring it slightly closer to the camera. And I'm going to set its color to white. Now, as you can probably see here, I've set this color to white, but the sides of it still seem to be gray. That's because these are lit objects, which care about shadows and the angle of light and all that. If I wanted it to look slightly differently, I can edit the lighting controls over here. Right now, our light is looking directly down at the scene as though these are flat on the ground and it is noon. But if I change this angle, you can see from our little indicator here that the light is now further pointing downwards, and our rotation to spin it around the center axis. This can be useful if you want to mimic lighting in a scene or just change how it looks to your own preference. I, however, don't, so I'm going to click the reset button to get these back to normal. I think this looks fine without any roughness, but we do need one more thing before I go ahead and bake this texture. As you can see, we still have some alpha clipping through in the background, meaning that if I were to make this texture now, this would be transparent, which is not what we want for a solid flat object. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a new object. I'll just get a cube, scale it up so it covers the entire scene, shrink it down on the Y so it's pretty much flat, and I'm going to move it behind our tiles. As you can see now, we have no alpha peeking through. I'm going to go over here, make it a slightly lighter gray because I think that dark gray would be a little distracting. And I'm going to make it rough since this will be some sort of cement or glue that's holding these tiles together. I think that's going to look pretty good. So now we're going to go over here to the save. You can see we also have a load function, but I'll get to that later as well. I'm going to go ahead and click save. This brings up a file explorer. You can see I can click this button to navigate up to get all the way to my basic C drive. I, however, don't want to save this texture in my C drive. So I'm going to go to Users, South, find OneDrive, Pictures, Textures, General, and I'm just going to go ahead and click this green button to save it in this folder. Let's call it Patio Tiles. And back here in Unity, I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder real quick. Call it Textures. Open it up. I'll create a new folder just because I like to be precise with these things. Call it Patio Tiles. Although you can name this, of course, whatever you want. You don't even have to name it at all. And I'm going to import our new pictures. Textures, General, Patio Tiles. Select them all and import them. This step, of course, doesn't matter if you're not using Unity. These files will work in whatever you're using to do 3D rendering, be that Godot, Unreal, or if you're doing 3D art with something like Blender. However, if you're using Unity, it's important that you mark your normal maps as a normal map in the import settings. If you try to make a picture that isn't a normal map, it will warn you when you're trying to do it, but it's better to just do it on import. I'm going to go ahead and make a new material and call it Patio Tiles. Make sure it's selected and assign our normal to our normal, our height to our height, and our color to our base map. And I'm just going to click it and put it onto our tiles. You can sort of see right now that it's functioning, but it's way, way too big. So I'm going to just make this 10 by 10 to make it tile a little bit better. And you can see we've got some nice patio tiles. But more importantly, you can see the way that the light is interacting with it. The sun for this particular scene is over there somewhere. And as you can expect when you're looking at the tiles from where the sun would be, you can now see the light interacting in the way that it would in real life, illuminating the part that's close to it and getting darker on the part that's falling away from it. It's also illuminating the tile edge that's facing it and illuminating much less the one that's not. If I rotate this light around, you can see the much clearer effect of it catching the various sides. As I bring it around, you can see it highlighting the bottom of the tiles, and over the top you can see it highlighting the tops of them. As well, if I zoom in, you can see the roughness that it's having on it. I think to make this image clear, if I go up here and I disable the normal map, you can see just how flat this texture looks without it. That's the power of the texture builder. It converts the 3D geometry into 2D textures. But I'm going to re-enable that normal map, and I'm going to move on because we have more textures to make. Back here in the texture builder, I am done with this scene, so I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to hold down this new scene button to completely wipe the slate blank. You can see it deleted everything we have, but not to fret, because if I were to click this upload button, navigate to my patio tiles, you can see we have a save file here that if I were to select, it loads what we just had. I, of course, don't want that and did this just for a demonstration, so I'm going to go ahead and delete them all again. I think now we're going to make the pool floor. You can have pretty much anything on the floor of your pool, but I think I'm going to have some nice rectangular tiles. You can see I've got a rectangular tile now, but it's a lot smaller than I'd like it to be because this texture, I don't need it to have too much variety in it because it's going to be pretty uniform for the bottom of a pool. So we're going to scale it up. Again, I'm going to scale it to about 5 because 5 units is roughly half of a canvas if you were to have a square object. You can see this will be about half the canvas length in height, but not quite as wide since it's a rectangle. I'm going to move it all the way down. I'm going to turn off snapping because I don't need it right now. And I'm going to move it all the way down and over into this corner. You can see over here it is now tiling, which is going to prove very useful for this texture. I'm going to duplicate it, reset its position so it's nice and zeroed out, but then force it all the way over to the wall so it's nice and uniform between its previous self. Before we go any further, I'm going to change these tiles' colors to white so that we can change its color by hand in the Unity editor, and this will be, therefore, whatever color we want it to be. But I don't want to make it rough or really change its grain size, since this will be nice and smooth for the bottom of the pool. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate all of these to fill up this whole space. And you can see we're pretty much good to go, although of course this will still have a transparent background. So I'm going to go ahead and add another square to cover that up. That's all we need for this one, so I'm going to save it once more. I'm going to call this pool floor. And if we jump back into Unity and import our new textures, do the exact same process that we did for the patio tiles. Slap it on, shrink it down, and you can see we have a nicely tiled pool floor now. I'm going to go ahead and change this to its gold color and make it shinier and more metallic because I want it to feel like real gold. And now you can see that's giving off a nice effect, but you can also clearly see the ridges in the tiles. Again, for demonstration, if I were to get rid of the normal map, that would look like a boring flat texture. But we bring the normal map back, and that's got some nice depth to it. Now for the pool walls. Once again, we'll make a new scene. And with this, I have much less of a desired design in mind, so I think I'll go for something vaguely geometric. First things first, I think we'll take a cube, we'll make it bigger and cover the entire background just so that steps out of the way at the beginning. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make this square white. It's already shrunk and it's already pushed all the way to the back. Next thing, I'm going to make another square, rotate it by 45 degrees along the y-axis so it looks more like a diamond, and I'm going to scale it up. I'm going to make this almost white, but a little bit darker so it sticks out from our background. But not too much. And I actually think I'm going to go ahead and change this to a trapezoid so it has some more depth. I'm going to scale it up, and I'm going to shrink it down on the Y so that that depth there is less prominent. If we go over to the normal lab, you can see that this blue color that the background is represents flat. Essentially, if it is this baby blue, powder blue color, it's not going to reflect light any differently than just a flat surface. But these colors will. If I go ahead and shrink this down more along the Y and remove that depth, these colors get less pronounced and get closer to this, almost like they're fading into a fog. But I think this is pretty good because I want it to be subtle depth. I'm going to go ahead and add a new object on top of that. This time I think we'll do a sphere. I'm going to scale it up. Scale it down on the Y just a little bit so it's more ovular. For its color lab, I'm going to make it white. And then in the normal lab, I'm going to do two things. As you can see, there are these lines in it that appear. This is because, while a sphere is perfectly smooth and so these normals change on a gradient, computers have a hard time rendering gradients. Meaning that we have to use dithering. So the dithering makes it smoother, but I'm going to go ahead and make this a cutout so that instead of it being a ball sticking out of the wall, it's more of a spherical indentation into the wall for a foot or a hand or whatever to give the wall of the pool a little more depth. Again, everything here should be pretty smooth because it's the walls of a pool, so I'm not going to bother adding any roughness to it. But I am going to add one more object, a cube. Actually, I think we'll make this another trapezoid. I'm going to shove it into the corner. I'm going to rotate it 45, and I'm going to scale it up a little bit, as well as making it another shade of gray. And this is, of course, where you have to use your imagination, because right now, this doesn't look like a whole lot of anything. But when we go ahead and save it, I'm going to call this Pool Walls, because I am extremely creative. Save it. Go back into Unity here. Import it again in the same way that we have for all the others. So that you have a texture built like the others, go ahead, drag it onto our walls, give it some more precise tiling. I think we're going to go even more granular than that. Let's say 25 and 25. That's looking good. And we'll give it that nice blue color. Now, you can see the pattern that we had going tiling here, but since this part of it isn't in the light, you can't really see the sphere or the depth as much. But if we look over here, you can clearly see the light catching the bottom of the sphere indentation as though it is an indentation and not an actual physical sphere. This again will get more apparent as I rotate this light around. and you can see the way that the shadows work on this sphere, mimicking actual depth. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this light around smoothly so you can get a nice look at how it feels. So you're starting to get the idea of what the texture builder can do. As you can see, while these are just basic colors, this looks like a properly tiled scene, reflecting light very nicely. Hey everyone, so immediately after the footage, my recording software, I think the encoder, completely freaked out and it started getting maybe like 1 frame per second, which is not ideal for a tutorial. But I've got this nice little showcase, I guess you can see we're just working on. Here's the pool without any of the textures or the colors or anything, and we've got it with the colors. And then, if I go ahead and press this button, it'll switch to the textures with the entire thing being made, including the patio walkway and the patio walls. This right here really shows you, as much as I could ever talk about, how good the texture builder is. All of these I made with the tools built into the texture builder and did absolutely zero post-processing on them afterwards. No Photoshop, no touch-up, no nothing. Just export and import and they're good to go. You can see as we spin around one more time what I was trying to show off in the video, the light catching these tiles, and in a couple moments here, it starts catching the gold on the bottom of the pool. Almost looks like gold bars, although I'm sure that's what the owner of this house would want. You can also see this texture in these stones down here, although the light doesn't quite show it off great. The grain of this wood, which is almost entirely depth. But the biggest takeaway here, or at least the biggest thing for me, is that this is mine. None of these textures I ripped off online, just slapped into my scene. This is something unique that I just created, and that was the whole point of the texture builder. I didn't want to use other people's textures, and now you won't have to either. Of course, there's no ceiling to what you can do. If you want to make something that's like AAA quality, you can always take these textures into Photoshop, use them in a larger UV map, put layers and edits over them, whatever you want. But this is a great starting point, especially for indie devs that don't have the time or the resources to make their own high-quality textures in the traditional methods. Just one more time, we're going to get that transition from just the basic colors to the textures. I'm very proud of this tool. It was supposed to just be for personal use initially, but then I kept adding things to it, and 6 months later, we have this. It's good to finally have this done. You, of course, can pick it up for yourself over on itch.io. And now, I finally get to get back to work on Harddeck, which I have been tinkering around with for the better parts of a year now. I've completely eviscerated, and I have a whole bunch of new documentation made for, so I get to go running on that again. The ideas that I've got and some of the stuff I've already made are going to be good, and since it's going to be more of a long-term process, I'm going to, and I'm making a vow here, not that those mean very much, but I will have a new video every month. Today's video is going up on, Friday the 21st, so a month from now, that will be Friday the 19th, the 19th of December. I will have a new video for you, and if you don't, I'll delete my channel or something. We'll see. But anyway, basically what I'm trying to tell you is you should subscribe, because I want you to. See you in a month.